Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Spirit of Texas Author Spotlight. I'm Lauren Scott, Chair of the Spirit of Texas Reading List Committee. In this episode, we are excited to welcome Spirit of Texas 2024 honoree, Andrea Mosqueda, author of the young adult novel, Just Your Local Bisexual Disaster. Joining us for this interview is Spot Committee member Heather Rowan. Heather Rowan is a veteran youth librarian and lifelong educator in Austin, Texas, with a passion for graphic novels and helping everyone find the right book. In her free time, you'll find her in her garden or tackling a jigsaw puzzle with her rescue rabbit, Courage.
Hi, Lauren and Andrea. Andrea Mosqueda, she, her, is a Chicana writer born and raised in Texas, Rio Grande Valley. She currently lives in Brooklyn with her partner and works in the publishing industry as an assistant editor. When she's not writing or editing, she can be found doing her makeup, drinking too much coffee, and angsting over children's media. Just Your Local Bisexual Disaster is her first book. Well,
Hi.
sorry, before we begin, not everybody may have read your excellent first book. So for those who haven't had a chance to read Just Your Local Bisexual Disaster yet, can you tell us a little bit about your debut novel?
Yes. So, Just Your Local Bisexual Disaster is a slice of life romantic comedy about a 17-year-old messy bisexual Maggie Gonzalez who's trying to decide who she wants to escort her to her baby sister's quinceañera. So
It
that's
gets,
where we
yeah, it gets hectic really quickly.
Oh,
We
it is
love
very nice.
we love all the family aspects, and Maggie's sister's quince is a big deal that kind of takes over their family's whole life for a little while. Quinceañeras are a big deal for both the girl and her family, and for bringing the whole community together. Do you have any great quince memories or stories you'd like to share with us readers?
Yes, 100%. I don't have any personal quinceañera memories, which is in itself a quinceañera memory because it's one of the greatest regrets of my life. But I didn't. I was way too shy. It was definitely something that I like. It's a lot of attention on you, and I just like was just like that age where you just want to crawl into the ground and like disappear. But my parents did force me to have a party at a barbecue restaurant where I wore a hat and boots and posed with a tractor. And it's one of those barbecue restaurants where the cows that get killed and eaten are like right outside the window as you're like eating their cousin. So it really was just like kind of the worst experience. Um, Overall, maybe I'll have a quinceañera as like a 30-year-old. Maybe I'll have like a doble quinceañera. Who knows?
I love that. That does sound very Texas, like waving to your future barbecue while you're eating your current barbecue.
Hi.
I'm here for the double. So, like you said, Maggie is a hot mess. And as a teenager who definitely didn't have everything figured out myself, um, I sort of see that. But like we've got a love triangle, trapezoid, like multiple romance potentiality situation. This book is just brimming with inconvenient crushes, which is something I definitely remember from my days of being a baby bisexual as well. Lots of books paint teen love triangles as sort of a light um, inconvenience because how does our main character decide? There's so many hotties just vying for their attention. But in Maggie's case, some of her crushes are really inconvenient and can impact her life, like her crush on her best friend, Amanda, and her on again, off again ex who may be seeing some other people. They're real problems for her. Do you have any advice for teens who identify with Maggie and have some problem crushes of their own?
Oof, 100%. I honestly wonder if there's even a crush that's it's for it to not be inconvenient. Because nobody wants to suddenly have all their attention sucked up by one person or like two people or however many people in your trapezoid there are. But what I will say is that I think the advice I have to people who are experiencing all of those feelings, especially for the first time or the first few times you experience, just to enjoy it. Like there is nothing that's going to feel more magical to you later on, as magical as like this moment where everything feels like ride or die, and just kind of try and ride the waves as much as possible and always like stay true to yourself when you're thinking about who you want to give your time to. Because as fun as it is when everybody's chasing you, there's also like the unrequited crush that then makes you just feel the worst ever. So as long as you continue to like believe in yourself and stay true to who you are and always be asking yourself what you want, enjoy it. Just enjoy it.
I love that. It is a really special time, falling in love or like or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I really loved about this book that I don't feel like we get to see a lot is Maggie's just absolute passion for places that would never make it into a travel guide. She really loves sharing her love for the valley with her new friends. So there's a scene in this book where they're in a city park, and it really just captures that sentiment. As a writer, how did you walk that line, that compromise between Maggie loving her small town life, but then also really wanting bigger things, wanting bigger bands to photograph, hoping to leave for college and go to NYU?
Mm, well, I think a lot of growing up is like figuring out what you want to do with like the rest of your life. But and more than that, often grappling with the scope of things that there are to do with your life. You could stay at home, you could go somewhere else. And when suddenly you go from being a kid who doesn't really have many choices to suddenly like somebody who can legally make any choice, whether or not you should or should have to. I think it can be quite a jarring transition. So it's natural to like worry about or wonder about what else is out there that isn't that you can't see, and wondering what it is that you could possibly want if you knew about it. So I think growing up is about holding those two, like learning to hold those two feelings of loving where you're at, but also wondering if there's like more out there. And it doesn't necessarily mean better or worse, it's just different. Um, and I always had to kind of like hold that too as somebody who, like Maggie, loved living in the valley, but also like wanted to experience life somewhere else because like I just wanted to try new things and do different things. And the more places I go, the more I love the valley, and the more places become home to me, the more like I know that that place always will be. Um, and so it was really important for me to picture like or for me to portray like beauty in the mundane and kind of the ways our little tiny human life when we're not really like involved in high stakes situations or we're not like really striving for some big mission. Like a lot of people, especially in places like the valley that typically tend to be like lower income, are like just living is often a radical like thing. Just existing in peace can something sometimes be something you fight for. So I wanted to write a story about a family just trying to get through life, and this one little shining moment where everybody comes together. It was a very slice of life, and I kind of really wanted to portray a place where that nobody would make a movie out of, you know, like nobody would want to like film things that's just grass or like like places without sidewalks. I always say cities without sidewalks. Um, and like all of those kind of places that people think are just like ugly or mundane. I drew a lot from kind of slice of life movies like The Florida Project, and on Netflix, it's on Netflix again, but it was something that really showed like the ugly side of like Disney World and like the mundanity in that like kind of day to day of trying to survive, and how beautiful it is and how magical it can be, based on like your perspective. Um, so I kind of wanted to make everyday life feel a little magical. Oh, I think I got it.
I, no, I think you definitely succeeded at that. Like I feel like we see that in, what really helps the valley feel like home to Maggie. And I love that you made a really similar journey yourself, from the valley to the bright lights of a big city. Um, I love that there's, some autobiographical notes in there. So I love that Maggie uses her passion for art to solve problems. So she needs a senior art project. She creates this Finsta account to both count as an assignment and solve her romantic conundrum of who to take to her sister's pizza. Obviously, we can all agree this is a bad idea. It was, a huge privacy violation. It wasn't that empathetic, but it's also a little bit genius. You can see the simplicity there. I feel like we hear a lot of negatives about teens and their interactions with social media, but I also loved how you showed social media was a place for teens like Maggie to work through thoughts and ideas themselves they're trying on as they grow. What positive potential do you feel like social media has to offer teens?
Ooh, so much, especially kind of now in the world where people are trading like news from all kinds of different places, and we don't have to rely on like the news media the way like our parents did, and like knowing how biased all of that is and how none of it's great. And we're all kind of getting our truth from places like Instagram, like TikTok. And so I think it has not only like potential, but has already shown to be a really positive thing for teens to connect with people who think like them and feel like them, even when the people around them, like, or the people physically close to them, maybe don't share like their same values. Um, and I feel like I could write a paper about how queer people find themselves on the internet. If you were on the internet, if you were on Tumblr in like the 2010s, like mid 2010s, like you grew of age in that sphere. Like growing up in Texas, living in a place that was more conservative meant that there was nobody around me I could be like, oh, I really like when my best friend is near me. Um, what does that mean? There was nobody that I could ask about that, but there were people on the internet that I could ask about that. Kids like just like me who were like making things, and in particular, I was in the fan fiction circle. Um, so of course, if anyone ever read like the awful Glee fan fiction I tried to write, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Faberry, you know what I'm talking about. Um, but so it was a place where I could really discover that not only are these parts of me not shameful, but they should be celebrated. And I had never like found that anywhere else. And it really helped me develop and grow like who I was on my own without like any outside guidance from the real world. So I think now um it's helping kids like actually create change within their communities. It's helping them connect with one another, and people feel a lot less isolated, which is why you see things like politicians trying to shut it down because they don't want teens to connect with each other. They don't want young people to connect. And I think that's very, very much why they should. And so over social media, um, and social media just has like so much potential for them to make great change, and it already has.
I love that. It can definitely be a really special place to create community when you are, a marginalized person in various ways, or just feel weird and feel different. And I love that you found your fellow Gleeks on the internet there.
Mhm. My partner and I talked about it like in the first few times that we met, and we're just like, you were there. Just look at us with war-torn eyes.
Um, One of the most wonderfully like ephemeral parts of YA and like teen literature is the use this like of the moment snapshot of teen slang, and you use so much wonderful slang in just your local bisexual disaster. Where do you go to listen to teens and keep up with their rapidly evolving slang and in jokes and all
Oh man. I'm on TikTok like all the time, of course. That's where I am able to keep up with the teens, so to speak. I remember what it was like to be a teen who had all of these ideas, and who had like their own language and were not understood by like adults. So it's really interesting to be like growing older, knowing that like one day I will also be cringe. If I'm not cringe now, I might be cringe. Um, but it's hard to capture things like slang and like in jokes in books because by the time a book comes out, it's so like there's like everything's changing all the time, slang is changing all the time. So by the time a book comes out, people are like, oh, that's not relevant anymore. So I tried to be as of the moment as I could, but I was changing things like up until like the book went to print because that's just how much language changes and it's a beautiful thing. But it does make it really hard to like write accurate slang. So I think the thing that I've tried to stick to is really just like getting like hearing how my characters would actually talk versus kind of like have just throwing a bunch of like slang in there that like I've seen some like authors do and hoping that'll work and hoping that'll resonate because it won't. Slang will change, but the feelings behind certain emotions and certain terms will linger. So I think talk like getting the more specific you get and the less general and just yeah.
I think that's great. I also am a chronically online person, and it's fun to watch myself. I'm definitely cringe being left behind. Like, I love how organic the evolution is that I could just sort of sit there and watch it happen,
Yeah.
and know that it's, it's for them more than it's for me, but I can still make everyone feel weird by using it every once in a while.
Yeah, I think it's like you have to keep current in order to keep like up with in general, like keep up like with what if you keep up with what teens are doing, then you keep up with like where the cultural like zeitgeist is going. And so it's important to like hang on, but realize that you're not a teen, but it's okay to like step back and let teens dictate culture, let teens tell you what the next like 10, 20 years is going to look like. Like, I want to listen to them.
It's pretty awesome to watch. So Maggie's passion is music photography, right? Which is a tough gig in the Valley. But there are so many great small local bands that she gets to embrace, and it's born out of her love of attending live shows. This past year has been epic for giant concerts between eras and Renaissance. There's just like a live music moment going on for teens everywhere, regardless of whether they're K-pop stands or into metal. Do you have a favorite concert memory that really sticks out? First concert, a best concert, a most recent concert?
Ooh, exciting. Um, my God, the I'm glad that you brought up like the Eras tour and the Renaissance tour because I wept like a baby at the Eras tour movie. I completely lost my and it was just the best thing ever. And I was just like, live music is so beautiful. Just like what makes the like which makes COVID and like being in a pandemic all that much more sad. Because I remember like that feeling, and it's something that I like desperately miss, but I haven't been to a concert in a while. However, I think the memory that's coming to mind right for me right now is I saw Mitski when she was first like before when she only had like that one song way back in the beginning in like the first album like I saw her in college when she came to like a bar that was like near and this was bar. This is just the worst bar. But she was gonna perform there, so I was there like the whole time. She was incredibly late for like an hour, but because she's not a diva, but because her like drummer like ended up passing out and having to go to the hospital. So she gets on stage and she's like, "Yeah, my drummer had to go and like my guitarist is with him, so I just have my bass." And so it was just the most rock and roll thing. Like she just like ran on stage and like her hair was like flying. She was like, sorry guys, like there was an emergency, so you just get me. And like just played like all of the first album songs with just like the bass. It was either bass or guitar. I can't really remember. I was too busy, lost in the moment. But I just remember there standing there just being like, that's so cool. I want to be so cool like that. So then when she like got even bigger, like growing up or like growing forward, I was just that's my cool story that I tell people who like Mitski. I'm like, yeah, I saw her before she was cool.
I think there's so much joy in discovering a new band, and obviously nothing replaces that sort of like numinous spiritual feeling of being in an arena surrounded by fans, standing up, dancing, and singing that music. So I can see why Maggie just wants to be close to that because that's really an emotion you can't capture any other way.
True.
So, what are you hoping readers get from experiencing just your local bisexual disaster? What do you want them to take away from the experience?
I want them to take away the fact, or from my book, I want them to take the fact that the only, or that romantic relationships are not the only love that can be profound and impactful in your life and have a very deep power over you. And I think we idealize a lot of, or we idealize romance a lot and like look towards it as like the end goal of our like self-development. But cultivating good relationships with your family and your friends is just as important. And you need those too. And so in writing this, I wanted people to remember to consider the other relationships in their life and understand that like each one has weight. And just because you're not in a romantic relationship or a relationship isn't romantic doesn't mean you can't have a very profound like intimacy towards it and like feel very connected. So I think that's what I want people to take away is just to kind of make sure that they treat like all love as something that's deep and valuable. And that just because you don't have a romantic partner doesn't mean that you're not worthy of love.
I love that. I think that's something that so often gets lost in teen narratives and romance narratives. It definitely, when you put something as the center of the story, it can make it seem like the other stuff isn't as valuable or as important. And it's true, we can completely lose ourselves in a crush, right? They take over
Hmm.
your whole life. And I
Hmm.
love that reminder. Um, what advice would you give an artist like Maggie who is working on her portfolio?
Wow. I would say leave yourself open to experiencing different things and experiencing different emotions because it's when you're especially when you're younger and you're like a young artist trying to find like your style or how you run things um it can be hard to figure out where to start. So finding or looking for inspiration in all kinds of different things and living your actual life is actually really helpful towards your art. That's something that I like have to grapple with. I always think that like I should just be writing all the time, but if you're working on your art all the time, you won't have any time to actually live your art to inform or to actually live your life to inform your creative process. So it's like then you're trying to pull from an empty well. So I think taking a step back every on occasion when you feel stuck and just to go live your life for a little bit sometimes help. Um, and your portfolio is something that is going to change with you and it's going to keep going. It's going to keep changing with you as you grow. So yeah, vomit all over your portfolio. You'll never know what you'll find.
I love that. It can be way too easy to put yourself in a box and decide
Mhm.
you're a particular type of creator. So I love
Yeah, my
that.
next book is a thriller.
Can you tell us anything about what you're currently working on?
You know, it's a thriller. If you like horror movies, like from a character standpoint and not necessarily like their blood and gore, I love all of it. But this is definitely more of a thriller, so I'm very excited for everyone to see it and I'm very nervous, but I can't say much more than that.
Is it
Soon.
for the YA markets? Is it for grown-ups?
Oh, no, it's
What
YA.
audience?
YA.
YA.
Sorry.
All right. It is a
YA.
YA.
Should have put that up top. Don't worry. It's still YA, but it's just a different kind of YA.
We love it. We love it. So
Thank you.
in this day and age, it's hard to be a character like Maggie. It's hard to be open and queer and on the front cover of a book in a lot of states, and Texas is one of them. We know there's a lot of controversy around characters and authors just expressing their LGBTQIA plus identities. Have you had any experience with Texas or any other nationwide book bans or the controversy around writing queer characters these days?
It's incredibly heartbreaking, but it's also not unexpected. And queer people live an existence that is constantly kind of under attack. So this feels like another facet of that, another more dangerous facet of that. So banning books doesn't mean that those books don't exist. It just means that those books won't get to people who need them, to kids who need them. And children need heroes. They need to see that they can have a happy ending, whatever that ending looks like. Because it can be very easy when everybody's telling you that you should be straight or you should live like you should live that kind of life, that it's very disheartening to try and like make something different for yourself. So if you have a story where you can like relate to the queer characters, you can see yourself living a different kind of life than the one you live. And stories like that are so important for survival, especially now. So it's incredibly dangerous, what the government is doing, and it's very intentional. And I will, and I think with my book, I won't ever stop like having queer characters. I won't ever stop writing them. I won't ever stop being loud and proud about them, no matter how many bands there are. I think it can be very hard, especially thinking about teachers and librarians. I have a lot of like librarian and teacher friends who tell me that they'll put my book anyway, even though it would get them like funded or fired. So it's really lovely to see like teachers and librarians doing their best to kind of work around these bans and um, get these books to kids as much as possible. Um, but it's very scary, and it's scary, but not unexpected, which is heartbreaking.
We love your book. We wonder, do you have any reading recommendations for people who are fans of other happy endings and messy characters just figuring themselves out? Anything you're reading right now that you'd love to hand off to somebody else?
Oof. Let's see. Yes, absolutely. This one and this one. Okay, so I love The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. This one was just so like when I tell you that like I cried so much and it was so relevant, it's just amazing. So that's one of my favorites. I mean, look at this cover, isn't it gorgeous? And then something that I'm reading currently is I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me by Jameson Shea. And not to like name drop, but Jameson Shea or quoted one of my tweets once and I died. Um, but this is a really great book. It's got ballet, it's got like gifted kid syndrome, it's got like overachievers, which is great as like a former overachiever, gifted kid burnout. I'm just like, yes, I would have sold my soul to a demon in order to be the best. So this, and there's also a sequel coming out. So this.
I love that so much. I'm gonna have to add it to my TBR pile. Well, thank you so much, Andrea and Lauren. I don't have any more questions for you, but it was so great getting to talk to you. Do you want to close
Yeah,
us
thank
out, Lauren?
Yeah, of course. That was so much fun to sit back. There were so many times I was laughing out loud back here. I was glad I had my microphone muted because that was such a fun conversation. And we really appreciate you being here, Andrea, and writing such a great book about an area of Texas that doesn't get the love and a character who is so unique and is one that our kids can relate to. So thank you for writing this book for them.
Stop. No, thank y'all. As I was talking about before this, like y'all are an institution that I've always wanted to work with in some form or fashion. Throw my name in the ring. Let me appear at TLA. I would like to do that. Thank you. Um, but it's really great to have this like spotlight shined on this like part of Texas that not many people think about. And I love talking about it every single chance I get. My partner always says that like I introduce myself with three things. I'm Andrea, I'm a Scorpio, I'm from the Valley, and I'm bisexual. um, so everything but the Scorpio is all here, not here in my book.
Yes, it is, and we love it. So we were so honored to have you today. Thank you for joining us today for our Spirit of Texas Author Spotlight with Andrea Mosqueda. Be sure to check out our Spirit of Texas website for book club activities, read-alikes, and more for just your local bisexual disaster and for all of our 2024 Spirit of Texas books and authors. Stay tuned for our next episode coming soon to the Texas Library Association's Young Adult Roundtable YouTube channel and to our Spirit of Texas website. And just thank you again, Andrea and Heather.
All right. Well, it was nice to see y'all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.